Hello everyone, I've just read chapter 11 of Coruscant Nights Street of Shadows. So Jax, Deja and I5 have gone to see Baron Umber. Um and it's a very long chapter, this one. It goes on for 20 pages. But it to kind of cut a long story short, Umber is very enthusiastic about Valet's art pieces. It's pretty much brought up that that Valet's art pieces would be the very last thing he would part with. If he and he would not sell them even if he needed the money, etc. So he's very enthusiastic about the art pieces, and he says that he kept buying them, and he eventually considered himself more than a baron, and more of a Valet's and Deidre's friend. Um, And I5 continually, at least towards the start, and keeps speaking up and keeps annoying the Baron. Um, and again, I5 is just so funny in this chapter, and Jax is constantly having to keep him quiet and under control. And Jax is very clearly also getting frustrated at I5's big mouth. And he even says that the droid suffers from an occasional glitch called Big Mouth Syndrome. So there's a lot of humour in this chapter. I think it's one of my favourites from Coruscant Nights so far, just because of how funny it is. Um, um, but yeah, it's pretty much made clear that the Baron is extremely enthusiastic about Vess for Let's artwork, and it's even and we even learn a bit more about Vess, about how he would never change his artwork for no matter the price. And in an instance is brought up of that where a senator has once asked him to change the colour scheme to better fit the decor in his bedroom, and Follett politely refused. And it's always made clear that he was always polite and but straightforward. He was always polite and straightforward and never meant to insult anyone. And Jack suggested that well, maybe someone may have interpreted that as an insult. And the Baron kind of just laughs at that, saying if you knew anything about if you knew Villette for even a short time, you would know that that was not the case. Um, but yeah, and it's pretty much just made extremely clear that the Baron is most likely not a suspect. And then his wife comes into the picture, who's just been sitting there, like assuming shadow, um, just observing, and she comes in, um, and she is not quite as enthusiastic as the Baron about Villette's work, but she can still appreciate the work. Um, and a little bit more of conversation, and eventually they all go. Eventually, Jax, I5, and Deja go. But before they do, Jax does ask the Baron if he can hand him a compressed energy crystal. And the Baron is immediately defensive because an energy crystal is the heart of all of the Let sculptures, and the Baron and the Baroness explain that to remove the energy crystal is to quite literally destroy the art piece. Once it's removed, you can't restore the art piece. It has to, the crystal has to stay in there, otherwise the art piece will no longer exist. Um, and again, it's made very clear how protective he is of his Villette pieces. Um, is there any bit of conversation that I should bring up here? No, I miss. Doesn't seem like it. Eventually, of course, then then they go, and I5 and Jax, they start bickering. Um, and I5 is saying that he was approaching the situation in a straightforward way. And Jax was saying, well, maybe in a machine-to-machine way that could be good, but that could be, that could be the best way to get information, but you're talking to organics here, and they got to be more tactful. And they basically burst into an argument, and then Jack starts getting a bit sad because, of course, and frustrated because he couldn't get the crystal. And Deidre comforts him by putting her hands on him. They leave. They leave the turbo lift, and they wait to go, and they start making their way over to Deidre's convertible. And they start running through what they know, which isn't a whole lot. And of course, Jax is frustrated because they just spent half a day with basically getting nothing. Um, and I5 and Jack seem to agree that the Baron Umber doesn't seem to be a suspect, but his wife, the Baroness, Kerma Umber, I can't remember the Baron's name, the husband's name, but they do somewhat suspect him, and Deidre is very much defensive of her. And it's also made clear that the wife is much more muscular than and bigger than Umber. Um, And I5 says, well, they've got to run through all the suspects, and and anyone related to Vess is a suspect. And Deidre goes, even me. And I5 goes, even you. But we've been here. What does he say? Surely everyone who had contact with the dead artist is a reasonable suspect. Even me, Deidre challenged him. Even you, although you've been ruled out due to physical inability. Physical inability? You ambulatory circuit board, I'll show you all right, you two, Jack spoke sternly to the droid. Yeah. Again, this chapter's extremely funny. It's a very serious chapter, but there's many funny moments, this chapter. Um, and Jax pretty much says that he thinks Siege is right, that the Baroness may do share his husband's enthusiasm for the artwork, but that she could respect it. And so we just don't think he's a suspect. I'm still a little bit suspicious of the Baroness, but also I can kind of see why she wouldn't have any ill will, but I could also see a little bit of reasons to why she might have a little bit of ill will to Villette. Anyway, um, and Deidre and Jack says that he was using the Force. He didn't use it on the Baroness, but he did it on the Baron, and the Baron was clear. And Deidre also says, and don't forget, I have empathic abilities, and she didn't pick up anything wrong. And Jack says, in any event, I suspect Paul House and his people will will perform their own thorough checks on the both of them. I5 still wasn't satisfied. I doubt that the prefix for N16 will include an investigator versed in the ways of the Force. Anyway, then they get in the convertible, and they fly up into the streets. Pardon me. And Jack starts running through what their next course of action will be. What now? Then the Zeltron looks at him. What now? I suppose we have a list of the rest of Vess's spies and of any non-professional social contacts. She nodded. She nodded. Whoever killed him left the studio intact. I haven't made a detailed check of it. Her gaze turns forwards, taking the massive flow of traffic between the towering buildings. If nothing's been disturbed, then all that information will still be there. After I drop you and I5 off, I'll collect it. Good. We'll make a list and start following up. what will we be looking for?" she asked. "Any close acquaintance who's gone missing or simply moved away? Anyone who tried to buy one or more of his works just before he died? And especially anyone who might have reason to hold a grudge against him, political, professional, you never know in situations like this. A sale that was withdrawn, a negotiation for a particular piece that fell through, something as seemingly insignificant as a perceived insult delivered at a meeting. The glanced over at her. We'll be relying on you to recall any such incidents. I'll do my best," she promised. And they make their way over to, what was it? To Peloda Place. And also something I forgot to bring up was that the Baron did have political disagreements with Vesperlet, but still, you know, they were good friends. This chapter was just fun. It was just a fun chapter, this one. I5 was hilarious in this chapter. Again, you just can't beat I5 and Den. No, Den wasn't in this chapter, but still, you just can't beat them. They're just so funny in these books. Um, and I5 getting so frustrated at things, etc. in this chapter, because he doesn't like being reduced to just a protocol droid. It's all just funny, he's so funny. The Baron, you can really see his passion for Vesperlet and his work. You can really see his passion coming through and how much respect and love he has for the works. And just, yeah. You just see how much he respects Ves and his artwork. And it's brought up that Ves hated the way art was usually sold on Coruscant, which added an extra flair of personalization to his artwork. So yeah. But anyway, let's go into who do we think the suspects are? Well, of course, Steger's been ruled out. The Baron, I don't think it's the Baron. I don't think it's Baron number. He's just too enthusiastic. He's too enthusiastic, and I just can't see him hurting him. The Baroness, however. First off, she's quite muscular. It's not really brought up in the chapter if she'd be muscular enough to break through to actually kill. You have the ability to kill Vess. But she's described as being quite big and muscular. And it's curious that she was quite shy and quiet, until she was called upon by the Baron. And she very much did seem quite disinterested in the conversation. She kind of felt like she was just talking just because she had to, and she does bring up that she has a lot of respect and fascination for Vess, and that although she wasn't as enamored with his work as her husband, she could still respect the work. But I have a feeling, may she have killed Villette because of her husband's obsession with the work? That does make me wonder. Is there if that might have had anything to do with it? Because I feel like the extreme enthusiasm her husband has for the work and her great disinterest does seem like it could be a bit of a motive depending on what her gain would be. I'm not entirely sure what the exact motive would be, but that could definitely be a fountain point for a motive. Again, we're going to see more I assume we're going to go and visit more characters and see what they're like as suspects. So, still too early to tell. But it's going to be interesting. Going to be interesting to see who the murderer is. Yeah, I really enjoy. I really just enjoyed this chapter. Um, I was going to read it yesterday, but I just didn't because I was running low on time. I just didn't have the time to. This took me about roughly an hour or two to read, um, and I just didn't have that kind of time. Definitely, if I was able to read it in time, I definitely wouldn't have had time to review. So I just didn't. And I prefer to do the reviews right after I've read them. So yeah, it's still fresh in my mind. I can go into all the details, etc. So yeah. Um, is there anything else that I want to talk about? No, not really. Um, there's so many funny moments in this chapter that I really can't really just pinpoint one and discuss them. Um, but yeah, this was a good chapter. It was a good chapter. It was just a fun chapter. With all because just because of the humour, it was such a fun chapter. I think it's one of my favourites in Coruscant Nights. Um, so yeah, no, I really enjoyed this chapter. It was really good. Um, and it's nice to learn a bit more about Vess, because it's a shame that we only had one chapter with him, and I was looking forward to seeing a bit more of what he would be like. Of course, then he got killed, which I didn't read the back of the book. That completely threw me. I actually have gone and looked at the publisher's summary since the murder happened, and it was, oh, okay, that's what the plot of the book is. That's why I was a bit of, okay, fine, we're getting to the plot of the book when Deja came and visited Jax. And it's not that technically the plot of the book, it's a different plot. About it's a murder mystery. Um, but yeah. If I do have maybe one complaint with Castle Knights stuff, it is maybe that it doesn't really seem to have a focused plot that it's trying to follow. It seems like it's doing a book by book plot. Each book has different plots, which is nothing wrong with that. But I think it just feels like I was expecting more of a continued through line story rather than it being a basically plot of the week. Um, I was expecting it to be more, without kind of more like Last of the Jedi, where it's all one continuous story, spread across 10 books. That's kind of what I was expecting, but it was nothing like that. So it's nothing like that. So there are continuous elements, but it's not one big continuous story. There's as some through threads, but for the most part, it's secluded stories, um, which I suppose in a way, you know, that makes these books a little bit more approachable. You don't have to read the earlier ones if you can't find them, and you can read the one you got, and you'll have the context as to what's going on, and that's good. That's good. You know, you don't have to, you don't have to catch up with everything, like if I was to skip a Last of the Jedi book, you'd miss loads of context. Whereas here, I could probably go straight from 1 to 3. I'd probably still miss a lot, like a lot, but you'd still be able to enjoy the story to an extent, to do a good amount. But yeah, um, again, this chapter was just so good. It was a really good chapter. This is definitely one of those chapters where there's really no way it could have been, cut down into separate chapters, because it really just was one big, continuous, big story. Could it have been shortened down by removing, excess words? Probably. You very much could have shortened it down to be less than 20 pages, but it was still a really good chapter, and I think the length was good. I'm starting to warm up to the length now. I think it just really frustrated me because the chapter lengths were really good in the last book, and then right because they were quite short. And then here, we all of a sudden go from like a 6-page chapter to a 20-page chapter, and it's all a bit like, oh. But yeah, I think I'm definitely warming up to the 20-page chapters now. Definitely warming up to them, and I'm quite enjoying them a lot. So, yeah. They always feel like a daunting task, though. But yeah. Um, how many pages? It looks like next time we'll be picking up with our Sing. And when is the next chapter? Okay, we've got another 10-page chapter next time. So, that brings us an end to this review. So, thank you all for watching, and goodbye. Hello, I've just read chapter 12 of Coruscant Nights, Street of Shadows. So other things come for a meeting with Vader in the Imperial Palace. Again, not the Jedi Temple. It's the Imperial Palace because this is Legends. So it's not the Jedi Temple. The Imperial Palace is separate from the Temple in Legends. She's gone to visit Vader in the palace. For a meeting, and Obviously observes about Vader and starts coming up with her own theories and thinks that the thing his main motivator must be hatred. And then they start having a conversation. And Obviously pretty much just talks about the simplicity and inorganic kind of surroundings of Vader's home here, of Vader's office in the palace. And eventually Vader gets obviously angry. And usually when she gets angry, someone's going to get killed. And she starts attacking Vader. And Vader very masterfully keeps defending himself with great ease, while other is pretty normal. And eventually Vader wins. And he tells her that she's connected to the Force, but she lets the dark side control her rather than controlling it. Anyway, then Vader asks, and then says that if you're going to kill her, to kill her now. And Vader says, why would he kill her? Because it's very few to have, because despite her imperfections and despite how she still has some ways to go, she's still she's still more skilled than most of the individuals he has to put up with all day, on a daily basis. And he asks for results on the Jax Pavan, and Orasing basically says that it's going well so far, but because she's not very well known on Coruscant, or as she says, Imperial Center, it's she has to keep proving who she is. And Vader says he doesn't really care about methods, he just cares about results. And he says if there's any access she requires that she's being denied, he'd be willing to give it over. But before we can even finish, Orasing interrupts and says no. And Vader gets a bit humorous and says, well, it looks like, and Orasing says that she's getting closer and she feels it, and Vader says, what, through the Force? And Orasing says, no, not the Force, something else, instinct of a lifetime of doing this job. And Vader says, well, it seems like the dog is learning, encouraging, and he says, go dog, fetch the bone, either bone for you, and Orasing bows and leaves, and she thinks the meeting went rather well. I'm surprised Vader didn't kill her or send her back to the prison ship, because that's what he said he'd do, and he hasn't. Maybe he'll do it afterwards. Now that she attacked him again. Yeah, although she has some nerve and confidence to act the way she does around Vader. And she tries to make a point of that she wants respect as well as credits. So the credits are her main motivator, but she also wants respect. It's also brought up that she tries to understand her employer as much as her target. And yet she makes very passive aggressive comments towards Vader, and Vader retaliates with his own comments. But yeah, this was again, I was saying is a very interesting. She's definitely interesting, especially with Vader. You know, she has a very daring attitude. You very much dare to say that, and it's surprising that Vader he puts up with it. Just because of just because of how how much she doesn't care about any possible consequences that might come onto her. It's really impressive that Vader's holding himself together and not lashing out on Nora. And Vader actually laughs at Aura in this chapter, um, quite a few times. Um, so yeah. Um, Again, this was a good chapter. It was a very competitive chapter between them, but it was also a very good, interesting chapter. Looks like next chapter is the last chapter of part 1 of the book. Now I'm going to go onto the Google ebooks just for a moment. I believe there's only 2 parts down to the free sample. Yeah, there's only 2 parts and 30 chapters. So I've got it all right. Okay. But yeah. Yeah, I've enjoyed the book. You know, I enjoy this chapter. You know, I enjoy this chapter. Again, I think Cora just keeps proving to be a very impressive with how she acts around Fraser. I think that's the most impressive thing about her. But yeah, she comments on Fraser's quarters. So yeah. Not really anything else to talk about with this chapter. The fight again was quite impressive. But yeah. Anyway. Thank you all for watching. I have nothing else to say, so thank you all for watching, and goodbye.